good. Oh, excellent. Thanks so much. Okay, thanks, Philippa. Yes, and the inevitable technical delay at the beginning of all online meetings. All right, well, welcome everyone to this Drug Policy Working Group AGM for the start of the new year 2023. If you don't mind, I'm just briefly, as I said, I'm Carrie, I'm from the Hackney Greens, and I'm a member of the Drug Policy Working Group and have been for 4 years now, since 2019, which is when we were rewriting the policy before it was passed at Autumn Conference, the Green Party of England and Wales in October 2019. So let me just share my screen so that we can, I won't be doing this all the time, obviously, but yes. And, why is that a copy? Why is it not allowing me to, oh, sorry. There we go. Yeah, just a couple of, just to go over a couple of kind of, I guess, ground rules and how things, oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Can anyone see? Why am I not sharing? Am I sharing now? Am I sharing? Yes?
It's loading,
okay.
yeah.
Yes, it's loading.
It says it's paused. Is it still paused?
Just
Is
says
it on?
loading.
Oh, God, help me. That's inconvenient. Is it still loading?
I can see.
Now it says I'm sharing.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Oh gosh, sorry.
Oh, now it's loading.
No, it doesn't like the slideshow. What, honestly? Well, I'm sorry. We're just going to have to do this boring. Okay. Forget the slideshow aspect of it. Yes, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function, but basically we'll have questions both after the presentation and during the meeting. Just to get us started, if you don't mind popping in the chat just your name, your local party, and your interest in today's session. We realize that for this first part there may be people who are not members of the Green Party. That's totally fine. You can just say, you know, you have an interest and that's why you're here. And then we can kind of get to know each other through the chat. I would say, however, that during the presentation and during the meeting, please keep the chatter in the chat to an absolute minimum. The reason for that is it's actually quite difficult for lots of people, including me, to be following both the online, the kind of verbal meeting and the meeting in the chat. If there's a reason that you can't ask your question or don't want to ask your question orally, by all means use the chat function. What I'm trying to avoid is a kind of parallel meeting happening in the chat. Yeah, and also please mute yourself, but remember to unmute yourself when you're going to speak. And if you want to at any point ask for an explanation or a point of clarity or whatever, please either just raise your hand or put your hand up in the little emoji function. Yeah, as per all Green Party meetings, we're asking people please to be patient with the technical glitches, of which we've already experienced 2. Hopefully that'll be the end. Be respectful of all others, both in speaking and if you're using the chat. Abide by the party's code of conduct. Hopefully everyone's read that in great detail just before logging on. And if you have feedback, please do share it with the working group after the meeting. We'll give you the opportunity to do that. So just to go through the agenda briefly, I've just done the introductions. Hopefully you're doing your introductions in the chat. When they're going to have a presentation from anyone's child, and I'll introduce now Jay and Mary. Well, they can introduce themselves, but they're the people who are going to be doing the presentation tonight from anyone's child. They'll explain to you who they are, what anyone's child is, what it does, and then they'll be speaking specifically on a topic which is of relevance, I think, to all of us, both within Drug Policy Working Group and in other issues, which is the topic of effective lobbying and presentation. Sorry, effective lobbying, and that's the title of the presentation. And we'll have chance for discussion and questions afterwards, both of the presentation and, I hasten to add, of anyone's child's work in general, which of course has been exemplary and an amazing both support and kind of model for us in the drug policy working group for the last 4 years. And then we'll have a quick break, probably about 5 minutes, and then we'll go on to the members only part of the meeting, which Zoe Garbett will start. I'll be chairing that, but Zoe Garbett will start off with the presentation. Zoe is one of the outgoing coordinators, co-coordinators. She'll present a bit about the working group's work over the past 4 years and the past year. Think a bit about priorities for 2023. And then we're going to have a time to elect or select, as the case may be, our incoming co-conveners and other key roles for the working group in the next year. And then we'll have a chance for some discussion and propose a date for the next regular meeting of the working group. We've been meeting about kind of every 3 to 4 months over the last year or so. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now. Oh, we're waiting for someone. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to ask whether anyone has any questions on kind of the agenda or points of order or suggestions for conduct before I pass over to anyone's child. No? Great, excellent. Okay, without further ado, thank you very much to Jane and Mary, and I'll pass on to you.
Fabulous. Well, thank you very much, Carrie, and thank you to everyone for having us here today. My name's Jane Slater. I'm the Deputy Chief Executive Officer at Transform Drug Policy Foundation, and I run the Anyone's Child campaign. Delighted to be joined by Mary Ryder. You might want to wave from her box. And she's joining us live from Colombia. So there we go, international we are. Just had to drop that in. Laura very kindly asked me to come along and speak today off the back of a training session that she attended that we did down in Portsmouth. And so I hope today it's okay that in my head this is a bit, already it's the goal of this session is that everyone can hopefully start to feel comfortable and confident talking about drug policy. And I suppose rereading the Green Party drug policy today, I also think you should be very proud of your drug policy. It is, I'm probably not wanting to be politically neutral as a charity. It is without doubt the strongest drug policy and lines up best with both Transform and Anyone's Child. And so this really is designed just to make you confident in talking a bit more and making the case for the need for reform. So I'd really appreciate if it is a bit interactive and that people do ask questions, and please feel that no question is stupid. That's the whole point of the session in my mind, is to get that so that you can go out and start talking about drug policy and really speaking out about it. So I'm sure most of you all know what your drug policy is, but it's the ending of prohibition of drugs and creating a system of legal regulation to minimise the harms associated with drug use, production and supply as part of an inclusive, supportive, socially just society. Which really, if you read a Transform mission and vision, I think you'll see that it very much sort of aligns with that. But just to start up, I wondered if we could just do, and I'm aware of timing, this is training we have delivered in both an hour but also a full day. So I'm going to do a bit of a rattle through it, if that's okay. And perhaps if you're super keen and you think, gosh, they've only just skimmed the surface, we can do something further going forward, accepting an hour is somewhat limited for quite a big subject. But I thought it would be really helpful if everyone would just really quickly introduce themselves and just say how confident they feel making the case for drug policy reform. And then hopefully we can get a sense of where to go in at this conversation, because I know already there are a few real experts in the room and I don't want to repeat myself. So is that all right? Can we try that? Should we start with you, Laura? If I go around in the order of my screen, hopefully I can.
Thank you, Jane. Hello, everybody. Sorry, you're going to have to ask me the question again. I was so intent in listening.
No, really. So you've introduced yourself, and it's about saying how confident you are in making the case. I'm going to say you're pretty confident because I've met you several times. I feel fairly confident. What I am now, I feel prepared for, is the array of responses that you may receive, which is a useful skill to have, because then you learn how to respond to things. So I've seen everything from Theresa May being quite rude and very sharply wandering off, to having local party discussions where people have been absolutely engaged and interested. So that's where I'm at. And I have to say thank you to Jane and Mary for coming. Carrie?
Hi, yeah, I'm Carrie again from Hackney Greens, and I would say that thanks to the amazing work of people like Transform and Release and Anyone's Child, and Neil Woods, and who we had a couple of years ago at our AGM, and all of these amazing experts from a wide array of backgrounds on drug reform, who I've listened to and engaged with and read over the last 4 years, I'm happy to say that I now feel, I would say fairly to even very confident, defending the need for drug reform and being able to articulate it really increasingly clearly in terms of part of the social justice commitments of the Green Party of England and Wales. So there we go.
Brilliant. Rose? She's definitely an expert.
Rose has been one of our role models.
I think Rose is on mute.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
Sorry. Technology.
Yeah. I think I'm quite confident because I've done a lot of speaking and telling my story, because I'm a bereaved mother who lost 2 sons to heroin. Yes, and I was a very active member of Anyone's Child, but then I retired from them, and I also helped at the very beginning of the Green Party Drug Policy Working Group with Zoe and the others. So I was very, very proud that our policy was voted for. But I haven't been doing very much lately, except for educating my WI. But that's about it.
That's brilliant, Rose. You're definitely an expert. I'm going to declare you that. Cara.
Hi, I'm Cara. I'm a relatively new Green Party member, but a long-standing interest in drugs, drug law reform and activism, going back sort of 15, 20 years. I've been part of Anyone's Child since 2015, and Rose's son Jake, who died, was my partner from heroin overdose. But yeah, all aspects of drug law reform really interest me, and I just think it's one of the key. It could solve so many problems if we could get sensible, evidence-based drug policy. So I'm pretty confident about talking about drug policy.
Another expert here, and Cara makes a lot of our films, which I will be showing some of later, so you can see some of her work. Fran.
Hi, my name's Fran Bury. I'm a member in Camden Green Party, and I work in public health, and I'm working on kind of things to do with drug treatment and harm reduction at the moment in central government, but only on a temporary basis. I'm only going to be there for another month. So I feel quite knowledgeable and kind of confident from a professional perspective, but less familiar with the kind of Green Party policy and the breadth of that. So it was really interesting. Zoe came to our local party to talk, and it was interesting to see the breadth, which I hadn't really thought about. We think a lot about opioids, and so thinking also about cannabis and other drugs was really helpful. So thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Fran. Mary?
Hi everyone. I don't know if you can hear me because it's really loud where I am. But I've been working at Tranform since 2016 on the Anyone's Child campaign. And I'm currently living in Colombia and working at a needle exchange on a that does harm reduction work with people injecting heroin in Cali. It's quite.
Lovely, thank you, Mary. I think maybe a reception went a bit there, but that's great. Glenna, I hope I said that right.
Yeah, you did. Hi, I'm Glenna. I am fairly confident, a bit more confident now that I've just listened to Neen's podcast with Simpa, which was great. Yeah, I have friends who are recovering heroin addicts, and they're drug users, so I kind of from their lived experience, and I also feel fairly confident in talking about the intersections between the racial and social justice issues that is under the umbrella of drug reform.
Brilliant, thank you, Glenna. Jules?
Hi, so I'm ex of the Green Party and member of the Drug Policy Working Group, along with Zoe and Kerry. Yeah, I'm really confident about especially talking about cannabis. I have been very vocal for a long time now. And to echo Kerry, thanks to Transform and Release, I feel a lot more confident talking about the range of substances. I'd say the only sticking point I have, I'm a teacher, so finding a way to bring this education into a teaching environment, is a challenge that I think about a lot. I'm even, talking to teachers themselves. But yeah, I feel pretty confident. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you, Jules. And yeah, I think that that is a really interesting challenge you raise, and it's something we've definitely discussed quite a lot, of how you can bring that in without addressing some of the legality stuff, which makes people quite nervous around it. So definitely up for having a bit more of a discussion about that. Hi, Zoe.
Hi, hello everyone. Sorry I was a bit late. Hackney Green Party and outgoing co-coordinator of this wonderful drug policy working group. Great to see everybody. Echoing what everyone else has said, I feel quite confident and actually absolutely love talking to people about drug policy. I'll take every opportunity to talk to people about why we should be legalising and regulating all substances. But yeah, just looking forward to hearing more about how we can effectively lobby. Thank you.
Ria?
Hi, I'm Ria. I'm from Croydon, so I'm Croydon Green Party. I'm fairly confident. It was one of the main policies that made me join the Green Party. But I'm excited to learn more in this session.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. Yay. Yay. Excellent. Miles?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm Miles. I'm the other outgoing co-coordinator of the working group, who's sitting on a train and therefore maybe a little bit in awe, unfortunately. I also feel relatively comfortable in discussing everything that we've been going through here, and I'm very much looking forward to what's to follow. So thanks very much.
Brilliant. Pallavi? Sorry.
That's right. Hi. So I'm Pallavi. I'm from West Norfolk Green Party. It's the first time I've come to this group, actually, thanks to Zoe. I'm the Green Party Health and Social Care spokesperson currently. And I very much want to develop links with this PWG and incorporate some of what's happening here in our health policy, which we're actually revising at the moment. We're hoping to bring a draft to the spring conference and hopefully have the final one after consulting with people like yourselves and every other group that we can think of. Hopefully have a final draft for the autumn. That's the timetable we're working towards. I'm actually, apart from the bare outlines of Green Party drug policy, I don't know much of the detail, but it's enough to convince me that we are absolutely on the right track. I'm a GP by profession, so I obviously deal with drug addicts professionally, and I've seen that side of the story, and it beggars belief that we are in such a primitive situation as far as the law is concerned. And I'd love to see more of that. But I'm also aware that the public have very, very strong feelings about it. For some reason, it raises people's temperature when you talk about legalizing drugs or making them safe or anything like that. Straight away, they start, I don't know, it seems to ring alarm bells for a lot of people. So I think there's a lot of need for educating people and explaining why what we're doing currently is not safe, sensible, or just. So I'd love to actually be able to have that conversation and kind of bring people on board. So yeah.
Brilliant. Oh well, hopefully we can help a bit with that and some of the lines of messaging that we've tried to have some of those conversations. And yeah, brilliant. Thank you for joining us, Michael.
Oh yeah, hello. My name's Michael. I'm West Berkshire Green Party, so Newbury. Yeah, well, I joined the Green Party this year actually due to drug policy. So I was a member of the Labour Party for the past, well, I think it was 8 or 9 years, and I actually left when Labour was talking about naming and shaming drug users. So as a member of the Labour campaign for drug policy reform, I was like, oh my God, bashed my head against the wall, and a lot of members were as well. And as a drug treatment worker currently, I was like, well, I'm just thinking about my clients. I'm like, how detrimental that would be to any kind of semblance of any kind of like recovery or discovery. So I was like, I can, in good conscience, back a party that was going backwards on something that was a big part of my beliefs and what I thought about public policy. Suppose in marketing, it's very interesting what the last speaker said there, Lavi, I believe, was the actual name. Sorry if I butchered that. I hope that's all good. But what you said there about public attitudes towards drugs, you think last half century it's just banged in drugs bad. In my local campaign for West Berks County Council, I've nicked the mantra, tough on the cause is a crime and fiscal responsibility. Because actually, if you invest in public health services, like early, help people out of drug addiction or prevent it to begin with, it saves a lot of public money later down the line. So again, if the human consequences of it are enough for a lot of people, but then you also have more conservatively minded people who also should be back in drug policy reform, because it ultimately saves taxpayer money. And that's kind of a case I'm making in very yellow and blue West Berkshire to try and get some more green councillors locally. But yeah, I'm quite confident about it. And anyone's child, you guys, fantastic organisation. Transform, I used lots of your stuff when I did my uni degree, so that was very helpful. Lots of good stuff coming out of yourselves. And I know when I was in the Labour campaign for drug policy reform, it's very envious of what the Greens are doing. So it's really nice to now be a part of that. So look forward to the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Philippa.
Hi, I'm Philippa. I'm from Luton and Bedfordshire Green Party, and I'm been part of the drug policy working group for about the last year. I'm an absolute cannabis nut. I have a medical cannabis prescription, and I talk about cannabis as much as I possibly can. So yeah, I'm quite confident. But all of the other drugs probably don't know so much about. But yeah, I'm really big into cannabis.
Fantastic, thank you. And Ben?
Hi everyone, nice to see you. Yeah, I'm confident Barnet's area and also on cannabis. Sorry I'm late. Yeah.
Thanks, Ben. Not sure we got all of that, but nice to meet you. Isabel?
Hello. Sorry, I'm just cooking. So I am pretty confident about talking about drug policy. I've just finished my master's. My dissertation was on drug policy. My sort of area of interest is on more like club drugs, more like quote unquote recreational, because I feel like it's an area that kind of doesn't get much of a look in. I feel like cannabis is quite well covered, and then you've got the more addictive substances which are well covered. So sort of mainly ecstasy is like what I'm interested in. But yeah, that is probably my sort of very specific area of interest. And I've also volunteered for the Loop last summer, doing their sort of research sort of side of things rather than the sciencey side of things. But yeah, today I just got a new job actually for a sort of grassroots women's organisation that's it's grassroots across the world, and my role is for sort of the head office in communications. So, and I know they do a lot of like positioning papers on things. So I'm going to sort of try and fly the flag for drug policy reform and get them to sort of, see a progressive policy, as a positive thing, and then try and get them to implement that as a sort of organisational standpoint. So, that's me.
Brilliant. I think that is everyone. Please do put your hand up if I haven't gone to you. My screens keep jumbling. But look, I think we've got loads of expertise here. So I really will try to rattle through particularly some of the stuff around what we do and try to get us a bit more into a conversation around some of the specifics of some of the bits you've mentioned, because I think, for example, Isabel, you raise an interesting point around the party drugs. A lot of the conversation often defaults to opiates or cannabis, so I think there's a really rich conversation that we could have there, and there are various other bits that have been raised which I would be good to go into. Hopefully for those who are newer to the issue, please just stop us if we're not making sense. So Transform, I'll just start at the very beginning. I will do this bit quickly. We're a charity and think tank. We've been going about 25 years, and our work is roughly divided into two things. One is critiquing the status quo. The other is creating a vision of a post-prohibition world. That it's the sort of very much evidence-based, researchy bit of our organisation, and we create really long, nerdy books for those of you who know us, including our blueprint for regulation, which is 250 pages. But what it does is lay out a vision of a post-prohibition world, looking at all the drugs across the spectrum. And we've now done books on cannabis, we're writing one on psychedelics, and there is one on stimulants, including cocaine, ecstasy. And these books are really being now forming what policy is. So any country that is looking to adopt or change their drug policy, thinking Canada, Uruguay, who have legalized cannabis, when they went to do it, they have given us the phone call, and actually members of our team have gone in and advised governments around how this policy should look. So that's really Transform's bread and butter. But about 8 years ago, we decided that we really needed a bit more of a public facing campaign, because these books were all well and good when you were really interested in looking at the issue, but we needed to start to change the hearts and minds, a bit of what Pallavi was talking about, sorry again if I've got that wrong, really recognising we've got to hit that public conversation and start to change public attitudes about this, because for years you just so mention the word drug and people sort of look like they're back shuffling out the room and trying to get away from you as quickly as possible, down to the taboo around the issue. And so as a result of that, I think Anyone's Child was formed, also meeting the brilliant Anne-Marie Coburn. And this was a campaign of families and people who have been directly impacted by drug policy, telling their stories, to try and change hearts and minds. It's a very deliberately emotional campaign, and what we're trying to show is that far from protecting our young people, drug policies are in fact putting our young people in great danger, and that we need to regulate the drug market. So it's a very direct counter to some of the narratives that had been put out for many years beforehand about how people are terrified for their children. And I would say that if there was one argument that you should use around making the case for drug policy reform, there are many, as you rightly have come out through this group, but if I'm going to use one, I think it should always be about protecting children. And I think that's whether you're dealing with a Tory, a Labour Party, any a cross-party, I think that is the strongest argument that we have, because I think there is such a taboo and social stigma around this issue. So that's my first thought. But anyway, what I meant to do was introduce you to the families via one of our Anyone's Child films. So I will do my very best to share my screen and show this film. Hopefully work. You see this? Hopefully this will work. I'm going to just do it.
Anyone's Child is a group of families whose relatives have died, disappeared, or been locked up as a result of the war on drugs. We believe that drug policy causes more harm than drugs themselves. What has happened to our children could happen to anyone's child, which is why drugs need to be legally controlled and regulated.
My daughter. Mi primo. My brother.
We never dreamed this would happen to us. We are a collective of families from around the world who see an urgent need for change. We believe that drugs are dangerous, and that's exactly why we want them legally regulated. We want governments, not gangsters, to control the drugs trade. We want to promote health, reduce crime, and protect all of our children.
If families work together, we can get change now. The time is right.
Did the volume work on that? Could I ask? Oh yes, phew. I was like, I hope it's not just me that can hear that. So that is the Anyone's Child campaign. And originally when we set up Anyone's Child, it was really designed to change the public narrative and have that conversation. So a goal of it was really about getting media articles about it. I always slightly joked that really I wanted this campaign featured anywhere that I wouldn't read. So I'm thinking the Daily Mail or your sort of trashy magazines. That was a real target of the campaign, and of that we've been quite successful. And over the summer, I think probably our best article of last year was in Cosmopolitan magazine, a really brilliant, very sensible walk through both harm reduction and making the case for regulation. But I think the thing that's really surprised me about Anyone's Child that I hadn't really anticipated, and I don't think my colleagues had either, was how effective it can be politically. And so increasingly using it as a way to create engagement with MPs and to reach out to change political opinion on this. So, and the reason behind that is I think that MPs for years were absolutely terrified about talking about drug policy. And you'd meet them and they'd say behind closed doors, look, I totally agree, but I'm not going to say that. And that was really starting to frustrate and grate us at Transform, because it was, look, this is, how are we going to break this, this recognition that people get it, but they won't speak about it. And people were terrified that they would be posted on the Daily Mail the next day with soft on drugs. And that was essentially the end of their political career. But what I think Anyone's Child has done is provided a sort of political cover to enable politicians to start to speak about drug policy reform. And so often you will now see MPs going, well, I'm talking about this. I met with my constituent and my constituent said, and then they'll tell the story. And what we found is it's been really useful as a way to break that deadlock around speaking about it. And the most powerful example of that we have is when it was in 2016, a number of us went over to New York for a UN meeting unsexily called the UNGAS, which was the United Nations General Assembly Special Session on Drugs. And at that session, we went along with a number of families working all over the world who campaign with Anyone's Child, including a mum called Donna May. And Donna May was there. She'd gone out and she'd written to her MP and to the Health Minister of Canada and held a number of meetings in advance of it. And as some of you will know, the more geeky amongst you, at this UN meeting, the Canadian government announced a change in cannabis policy. And when they went up to the stage, we got a phone call that morning. It said, you must get Donna May to the UN today. And we were like, oh, this is very strange summoning to the UN. But as the health minister declared that they were going to change cannabis policy, which I know is not all drug policy, but it is a great progress compared to where we're at the UK, they said, well, look, this is an almost exact quote from the Jane Philpott, the then health minister. She said, look, I've met with experts, I've met with government ministers, I've met with all sorts of people, but the person who has persuaded me that we must change drug policy is this mother, Donna May, and we must do it to save the children of Canada. Now, whether Donna had persuaded her or whether she hadn't, to me is almost irrelevant, because I think it is that political cover coming in, because it enabled her to stand there and say that at the UN, we can go against United Nations drug policy, right? And I think that's the power of the campaign, and why I would encourage people to speak using stories from their heart and talking about the real reasons why they are calling for change. And we've witnessed that being rolled out in the UK now in over the last 5 to 6 years. In every political debate on drug policy, these family stories have started to come up, including Rose's in the House of Commons. So I think what I'm trying to say is that I think it is both effective as a political messaging, but also for the public facing campaigning and for having these conversations. And I'm going to introduce Mary now to talk a little bit about some of the intricacies of policy and some of the more tricky questions we might get.
Thanks, Jane. Do you have that graph?
Yeah, I'll put it up. I'll do my best to put that up. One sec.
No, don't worry. Well, so I'm just going to talk a little bit more about what Transform campaigns for and sort of why we do what we do. Essentially, Transform campaigns to end the war on drugs and to replace it with a system of licensed legal regulation, which would be controlled by doctors, pharmacists, and licensed retailers. And we just wanted to show this graph because there's often a lot of misconceptions around what exactly legal regulation is, and the misconception that it's sort of a free market. So if you see this graph on the left, you've got the left-hand side, you've got sort of free market policy. On the right, you've got really strict prohibition, and then the sort of bit going up shows the harms to society and public health. And what Transform advocates for is a sort of this sweet spot in the middle, where there's really strict controls over every aspect of the market, essentially. So with the strict legal regulation, you can control everything from production through to use. So where the drugs are produced, who produces them, products themselves, the packaging, things like that, pricing, vendors, who is able to sell them, what licenses are they subject to, training, outlets, where would products be available from, and things around availability as well, so age requirements, who can access them. And all of these things are possible with a legal market that is strictly regulated, but not with an illegal market. And as Jane mentioned, there would be a different approach for different drugs, as I think everyone here already knows, and we can share our books on this later, but it's just worth saying that you wouldn't have the same controls for a drug like heroin as you would for cannabis, as you would for alcohol. And I think the other point that, a lot of you in your introductions were talking about social justice and the importance of this to the Green Party. And I suppose things have changed since 25 years ago when Transform first started talking about regulation. And as it has become a reality across the world, the debate for us as activists and reformers has shifted a bit, and it's not enough to just talk about regulation being a possibility, but also we need to talk about how it can achieve social justice and protect public health, and ultimately how it would make the world a fairer place and try and address some of the harms that well, all the harms essentially that prohibition has created. And Transform believes that a principal aim of regulation should be to address these historic harms, which have been felt most heavily by marginalised groups. So in the UK, that's disproportionate criminalisation and exclusion of people in colour. In other countries, that might be poor and excluded farmers, for example. And there's a number of ways that this can happen, and again we can share resources in this after, but it's about talking about things like the abolition of criminal records. So in a society where cannabis, say, is legal, it's really unjust for people to still be harmed by a criminal record they have for when it was illegal. Things also like providing economic opportunities and inclusion for people that have been impacted by prohibition, and better investment, investing the resources to be made from regulation back into the resources, into the communities that were harmed, And I think just to stress what Jane was saying, when you're talking about this issue, there's no need to sort of be another drug policy expert. One really powerful approach we found is to talk sort of from the position as a parent or from your profession. So I know that there's teachers and GPs here, or to just talk about it from as a member of your constituent and sort of caring about the impacts on people in your area. And then another sort of really powerful approach we found to having this discussion, again, is to find common ground. So as Jane said, sort of the desire to want to better protect children, and then looking at how prohibition and our current approach is not doing this, and then looking at the alternatives and how might a legally regulated model better achieve that. And I'll leave that there.
Sorry. Brilliant, thank you for that, Mary. Yeah, so I hope that's I mean, it's almost impossible to sum up what we do in about 3 minutes, so I apologise if we haven't done that. Brilliant. I'll speak for myself. But hopefully that is enough for you all to get a sense of our work, and I have a sense that lots of you have that. I think the number one thing we like to say at these sorts of trainings is actually you don't need to be an expert to talk about this. And what I was absolutely amazed about is how quickly you can become an expert in this issue, simply because a lot of people haven't thought about it. So I want everyone to feel very confident on the grounds of that. This is Transform's sort of a cheat sheet book that if you haven't come across it, we'll stick it in the link as well. It is our debating drugs guide. Basically, we designed this quite a number of years ago with the idea that parliamentarians could stick it in their pocket, and if they went into a debate, hopefully we've answered any tricky question that they might face. I always ask people, please do take a look at it, and if you think you have a better answer or you think one of the responses isn't working, please let us know, because I think it should be a live document that we can keep up to date. But yes, hopefully you can take a look at that, and we should have answered a lot of what the more tricky questions around this. Now, in the opening, a number of you, there were different levels of confident, from really confident to not so confident. But what I really wanted to do was provide a bit of space that we could maybe go into breakout groups and really start to go into some of the questions that you might see as more tricky. For example, is everybody clear on the difference between decriminalisation and legal regulation? And that's a classic one that lots of people seem to confuse, and I think that's quite important going into this debate. What would you answer if someone said, well, surely if you're going to legalise drugs, use is going to rise? Or I'm absolutely terrified for my children about drugs becoming more available, or surely it's not going to happen. I mean, these are just some of the sorts of questions that we come up against, and I wondered if we can perhaps go into our groups and if people will be honest around maybe something that might put them off going into a debate around this issue or raising it as a member of this group. Please put it in, and perhaps as groups we can try and workshop answers and think about how we might answer that. And if we can literally just do that for 5 minutes, hopefully that will be useful for you. Just reassure you that you are probably experts already, and to have confidence to have these conversations. My job is to talk about drug policy day and night. So if anyone comes up with any questions around it, please just ask. Transform is a resource that is there to be used, and having members of the Green Party working group active and flying the flag is something we absolutely welcome. So please don't let that be a barrier to you speaking about it, and do ask us. And it's probably an error on our part for not having put the argument out there. So help us make our resources better. If you haven't already, do take a look at our debating drug guide. I hope that will help you to be even more confident campaigners. And I think Mary will hopefully put a whole load of resources that we have up in the chat. If you haven't come across them already, please check them out. We've got tons of stuff. If there's one thing you can do to help us progress the case for drug policy reform, I would encourage every person here to write to their MP if they haven't already. We really are having good success at managing to get more and more MPs on board. There's a template letter on the Anyone's Child website, so please use that. Do adapt it, make it personal. But as a result of activists like yourself writing to their MPs, we've gone from one MP who supported us, the great Paul Flynn back in the day, to now last year we did a big call out to MPs to try and get them to support a review of the Misuse of Drugs Act, of which we had over 50 MPs signed up to. And I know a lot of that is a result of activists going and meeting and badgering their MPs. Again, if you're worried about meeting your MP, ask people at Transform. We're really, really happy to prep you for those meetings. We'll even attend those meetings with you. We can provide you with packs of information. Anything that makes that easy, please just ask. Every year we also head to Parliament. We do a lobby of Parliament that Laura was part of this year. It's a really nice day. It's a good day to meet other activists who are really passionate about this. You can go and meet your MP. The idea is that we're all there en masse. Again, you'll have Transform staff available. So if you're like, come and help me, we're there and we'd love to do that. And as I said, it's a really good day to just meet other people who are really passionate about this issue. So please join us. And I suppose I'd like to encourage you all to keep raising this amongst the Green Party. If there are any places that we can help, we're putting on events around the country. If any of them you think, oh, we'd really like to do something in my local area, again, please get in contact. We're always looking for places and audiences who we can speak to. So just ask. And yeah, I just want to say, have pride in the Green Party's drug policy. It is the best drug policy there is. It is something I think a lot of people don't know about it. I think they just think Green Party environment, maybe that's a bit simplistic, but I think it is something that we should be shouting from the rooftops. And I hope that you can all go out and spread the word and be really proud of what a brilliant policy you have and how far ahead of the other parties. And on that, thank you for having us. And please do get in contact. Again, I can share my email, and any questions, really happy to answer them. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. It's really great to meet you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, both Jane and Mary. And I appreciate you taking us through such an amazing amount of material in such a short time. And I'm sure you have, even are stretched to the day workshop because there's so much stuff. But I think the great breakout rooms was also a really good chance for people to to get an idea of what some of the challenges are, but also really the opportunities for talking to different people about drug reform. And that's, you know, a good segue into the second half of our meeting, because that's really what we want to be talking about now is, you know, where we're going to be going for the next year. So thank you so much for the resources as well as the presentation.